We're going up and down, over and over, over and over. It's the same old thing. Up and down, over and under.
Ari, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you, Ken. Great to be here.
Yeah, I was just telling you, I'm personally very excited about this one. I don't think we've had some great conversations with nutritionists, but I think a lot of those conversations have been more broad strokes. It's like, hey, what are the core foundational principles of nutrition? And then what are some of the other, oftentimes it ends up being diet centric. And I don't mean that to say that like we're pushing diets here, but it's like trying to understand a lot of these approaches that I think are becoming popular and trying to help people make sense of like what the heck is going on. And so when I came across your company and what you're doing, I thought this was a really interesting space and personally wanted to find out a lot more about what you're doing over with Elo Health. But maybe before we get into that, one of the things that I'm personally interested in understanding is how does one come from Finland and end up being a tech entrepreneur in Silicon Valley?
It's a long story, and I think it all started. I think when I was maybe 7-year-old, my dad he was a research scientist, and he got a first PC at home. That was early 80s, and of course you couldn't do a whole lot of research on a PC at that time, but you had a few games. So I started to play games, tinker with the computers, and I got hooked. From very young age, and I became one of maybe the first digital natives. So I was maybe 14, and I got connected to the internet. That was like early 90s, and I actually enrolled to university in my high school just to get the faster broadband. And the gaming was kind of my thing. I've been working gaming for a long time. I'm still involved in some games companies, but I was one of the first people in the world to play video games and make money in the mid 90s, and not just playing games for money like poker or whatever, but I was playing these multiplayer games like World of Warcraft and Ultima Online, the precursor of those, like text-based games. I was one of the top players in the world, and I basically killed monsters to get like swords and armor, and I was selling those for real money and making $5,000 a year in high school. And my mom think I'm selling drugs. So that's kind of my background. So you got into these things early, and then I got to tech later on. I was in a startup already in '99, but I got to work at Nokia at the heyday of Nokia when we invented the first smartphones before iPhone and Android. We invented the App Store. We invented the games on mobile, and I came to Silicon Valley almost 15 years ago to run a new unit for Nokia called Game Studios and App Studios. So we built a lot of different games and apps for the Nokia smartphones back in the day. So that was my route. And often, I'm an immigrant. I'm also American today. But many people ask me like, how did you get here? Like, my wife is always laughing at this. But when we came, we had movers coming to our house in Finland. They packed our stuff. They even packed the trash. And then we go to the US on business flight, and then we go to a new house. Somebody's unpacking everything, and like the easiest thing in the world to get in the new country.
Logistically, it was actually easy. It sounds like
it was very easy. But it was a dream of mine I'm an athlete, wannabe today, and I played hockey all my youth, and I always wanted to play in NHL, and never was big enough. I'm barely 6 foot on a good day, and too skinny to be a defender. But I at least I got the chance to play the NFL of entrepreneurship in the Valley for the last decade and half, and it's been an amazing journey, and I wouldn't give a day back. It's been most amazing time in my life to see the rise of smartphone and all the data AI that happened, and it's been a blast to be here.
Oh yeah. Oh, I can't even imagine. Just you were in Silicon Valley at the right time. But what's amazing to me, so you were like 25 years early to what are now NFTs in gaming. I mean, but what's crazy is you were doing it without the whole like built-in ecosystem. And I mean, do you just based on your background, like, do you follow that at all? What's going on with like play to earn gaming and all of that right now?
Yeah, I follow a lot, and I'm involved as a investor, advisor some companies today in the gaming, and not so much gaming, but I look at like edutainment, edugaming. Can you learn by playing a game? Can you bring gaming into health, for example? Those are the things I care about,
Oh,
or training.
interesting.
But
Yeah.
I was in every virtual world that there has been, I've been playing it along. So like Second Life, I had a city there, and all these other things. And I've been waiting for the Ready Player One world or the meta to happen for 30
Yeah.
years. So I'm so stoked at the moment that people are coming to my room, and I can finally talk to people about it, because I was such a nerd when I talked about this, because people really didn't understand what it is.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I was living it, and I mean, this is maybe not topic of today, but
I love this. No,
but
please keep
think
going.
about this for a moment. That like the biggest problem like we have, or one of the biggest problems now in the whole virtual reality, that we have this uncanny valley concept, that things kind of look real, but they don't look right. Like if I built your avatar into the virtual world and you look about the right, but not really right, it feels something like iffy. It doesn't feel good. And the world we go in the virtual world, it's a depiction of the world around us. So we copy. And think about when I played these games as a kid, it was text-based. And
Okay.
the most powerful thing when you want to immerse yourself into a new world, it's not about watching a movie. It's not about, listening to audiobook. It is about reading, because you read slowly and then you move in that world. So, I mean, still today, when I go to my parents' place at times and they are cooking some food that I was smelling when I was playing these games, I can go into that portal, in that world, because of the smell, the sound, the familiarity that you don't really smell elsewhere. So it's very
Right.
bizarre how powerful these worlds are going to be. And I was addicted. I spent 20,000 hours of my life playing these games. And that's a lot of time. And I'm fearful yet hopeful about the future of the virtual reality. And of course, now with the COVID, we got in this world where Zoom is our portal to other worlds.
Yeah.
Like we are talking now and seeing each other. It's not the same as being on a room and having maybe a beer together, or green tea, depending on the day. But in the VR, we probably can do that. So
Yeah.
I think we're gonna see this is maybe the biggest shift of our life that we're gonna see in our lifetime, when we move from the iPhone and the Zoom into the real VR. It will happen within the next 10 years.
Well, and that's something that I've kind of been fascinated by too. It does feel, and I was just talking, I'm trying to remember another guest about a different inflection point, but it feels like we are at an inflection point where you're about to have like that hyperbolic growth, that hyperbolic just technological expansion and innovation. And so it's such an interesting time to be alive right now, because things are changing so rapidly. And to your point too, one of the things I often think about is, when you try and have a conversation about maybe like, let's say like the metaverse, or, some of these really innovative digital technologies, people are like, well, that'll never catch on. I could never get into that. It's like, you don't realize it, but you've already dipped your foot in the water. If you're spending like all day on Zoom and business meetings, like it really it's the first step. Like first it was spending all day staring at your palm in whatever immersive experience you were doing in your app. But now it's like, it's like just kind of the broader society is slowly becoming comfortable. And so to hear someone like you who's been immersed in it for, the better part of over 2 decades, to say that this is a really exciting point, there's about to be a big change happening, I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, no, great way to put it, because there's this book that I love called "Slow Pace of Fast Change." So everything
sounds great.
Everything we think will happen in the next few years will happen slower than you think, but everything that will happen in a decade will happen faster, because we can't understand exponential growth as human beings. It doesn't compute in our brain. So things start slow and then they accumulate, and then in 10 years we are like think about 15 years back. We had this, we carried like a bulky phone that weighed 10 kilos or whatever, or 20 pounds.
Right.
I'm still metric system. Sorry about that. But
No, that's all right.
now you have an iPhone, and iPhone is and a smartphone is basic. I think there are more smartphones today in the world than there are people, more like 7 billion or something. And that happened like 10 years. Think about what will happen in the next decade, because the speed of change will never slow down. It will only accelerate. And poor humans, we need to upgrade our CPU and our brain. And, nothing is as slow as evolution. It will take, 10,000 years before our CPU, the brain, is getting to the right level, yet we have everything else moving lightning speed. So that's kind of what I think about a lot when I think about my own life going forward. And when I look at my kids, my 7 and 3-year-old kids, and what will the world be for them? What should they study? What should they do? How should they live in order to get the benefit of this amazing pace we're going to see?
Well, okay. So I've got a bunch of questions for you, and I do want to get to Elo Health, I promise. But to that end, so thinking about exponential growth, like I just was reading something interesting about, the Genome Project, and I can't remember the specifics, but basically, I think it was, basically there was some milestone that was really important, and they were only like 1% of the way to where they were supposed to be. And a bunch of detractors were basically saying like, oh, they're way off pace. They'll never finish in time. It's going to cost way more. But those who understood exponential growth knew that it had already doubled, I think, whatever it was, like 6 or 7 times. And they were like, just wait. Like, we are actually on pace to maybe like beat our projections just because of that, like you said, exponential growth. Like the people just can't kind of get their head around it. So I always find that so fascinating. But to something that you just said, what do you think are those areas that are worth kind of, I don't know if exploring is the right word, but doubling down on to make sure that like you're well positioned to still like be a contributor in the future?
Well, I think I'm hopeful about the fact that healthcare longevity expansion. I'm hopeful that the way we're gonna help people thrive will improve dramatically fairly soon, because healthcare and health is really data in the end. And now we have a system that we have people looking at charts and information that is very difficult to comprehend. The healthcare system and the whole healthcare, human health, is basically completely a science that is not meant for person to even look at. It has to be an AI helping a person to turn it into meaning, and then the person can make decisions and help, guide. That's what I think, a doctor should be, like a coach, like a translator. So I'm hopeful that, there will be interesting things happening in the future. And, you and me, we are, maybe in a midlife or whatever we're going to call it. It's scary and as hell. And we are trying to do our best, to thrive and, be at our best every day. Yet we still know that, every day we are getting closer to the end. So what I want to do myself, and what I want to help other people to do, is to thrive and find these ways that they can do to make sure that, when the future comes, they are still in the states that we can save them, or they can do well and they can be doing the right things. So that's kind of what my passion is today, and what I do every day in my company, and what I try to talk to my friends, because, I think it will be difficult no matter how the science works. But if you're going to be like super sick 60-year-old, I don't think we can make you super healthy 20-year-old. I think you have what you have. So I think I'm going to try to be there, and, I hope to be 80 and still go, ski with my kids, and hope to heli ski or whatever I do at the 80. I mean, there was one guy, I'm maybe rambling a bit now, but, one guy who was 100 years old. He was 100. And on the birthday, he went skiing in Alps. And there was a footage of this guy, like a skiing powder at the age of 100. Like that's my idol. I mean, that's what I want to do if I can.
Well, I talk about this a lot with my wife, and I've mentioned it on the show. For those who've listened, like, they're well aware that I am also very much interested in longevity, health span. And it does seem like we are in a very unique pocket of time where, to your point, if you can pay attention now, start taking great care of yourself, and at worst maintain, there's a very real possibility that technology is going to catch up to the point where you might be able to really extend not only the length, but the quality of your life. We interviewed a gentleman by the name of Dr. Andrew Steele, who wrote a book called Ageless. I don't know if you've seen it. I really enjoyed it, but I think the term he used was like longevity escape velocity.
Yep.
Does that sound right?
Yep.
So basically it's like, if you can just hang around another 5, 10, 15 years in good health, like you are going to have an opportunity if you take advantage of it. To your point, you know what I mean? Hopefully being really active and living a very full life. Hopefully, deep into your 90s, hundreds. I mean, I get really excited thinking about the opportunity. Like you said, you have 2 kids, I have 3. I'm like, man, like what is the opportunity going to look like for them? I mean, they're 20, 30 years away from this quarter life, midlife crisis. And the world's going to look a lot different, hopefully for the better, thanks to companies like yours. But it gets me excited. It's just, a very fun time to be alive.
And I think there's one point that I mean, I'm not really talking about my company Elo to be a longevity company, but of course longevity is the one thing that you often gravitate to when you talk about these topics.
Sure.
And I'm been trying to understand and develop this sort of philosophical approach to this whole topic. And it was really interesting. I started to read and do some research. I'm early in my story, so it's not very well thought out maybe yet. But if you open almost any of these books that define what humanity is, think about like Iliad and Odysseus, and any poem or book that defines a society, like the Roman society or the Greek society or the even the Egyptian societies, not to even talk about the current ones. Every book has this sort of a goblet of youth, or fountain of youth, or fountain of fire of youth, or monster giving you the artifact that you can live longer. So living long time and escaping death, or having the velocity getting out of the longevity, that is basically one of the ultimate human values, and maybe not the value, but like a goal of humanity. And think about because it's been so abstract now, and I don't think we are very, very close of that yet, but we are seeing some early innings that we might be able to live longer, not just like good life to 80, but we might be able to live maybe 120 years old, and then everything will look different. And some people say, I don't care about that. But I'm saying that once these become available, these become the most sought after things people are going for. And I think there will be business in next 50 years, 100 years that, will become bigger than, Google and United Healthcare and Facebook and Tesla, that are providing people extension of their life and betterment of the old age. Because, I mean, if you are 80 years old and you ask people, would you be happy to live 10 years more? Many people say, no, I'm cranky, I'm broken, I'm not feeling good. But what if you ask,
living in pain?
If you could say that you could feel like you felt at 50 and you could live 20 more years, everybody will give all the money basically for that. So there's this philosophical aspect that, that is the ultimate goal of people in the end, to live long time. And nobody wants to leave this beautiful place we call our home, Earth, spaceship Earth. And it's just a really cool thought, and because it's been talked about for thousands of years. And I think there must be cave paintings where they hope to eat the mammoth tusk and live longer, I bet. But that's what we've been talking in a campfire for 20,000 years, 100,000 years since we started to develop language, I think. So it's a very fundamentally cool topic to talk about, and none of us know what it will look like, but it's pretty exciting.
You know what? I think you're right. And it's almost as fundamental as, debating and trying to figure out what happens, not to get, we're getting really deep here, but what happens after you die. It's almost like hand in hand. You're like, how do I put that off? How do I, there's a very glass half full way to look at it. There's also a glass half empty, which is like, I don't want to, I don't even want to think about my mortality. It's kind of what it is, right? It's like wrestling with that. No, so I completely agree. I mean, so many great examples of history of people going to great lengths to try and find, like you said, that fountain of youth. And it's just pretty cool to think that the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, there's going to be hopefully a lot of really interesting ground broken, and we might start to get answers to some of these questions, which is going to be pretty fun. But to your point, go ahead.
Yeah, I think there's one point that I've been kind of thinking as well, because it's when you have family. I mean, that's kind of the time often that people think that there's something bigger than you, and you become not you, but you become a unit, and you have responsibility, because we have this nuclear family today in the West mainly, where we have a few people together. It used to be like a bigger entity, but there's this moment, I think, that a lot of people maybe have felt. In Roman times, they call it Memento Mori. I don't know if you're familiar with this word, but it's basically, if you think about Caesar, he was doing the triumph after the big victory they had against the Gauls or whoever they were fighting at the time. And the Memento Mori concept was that there's a servant behind you, and they are holding the leaf on your head and whispering the ear of Caesar, Memento Mori, you are mortal. You are not a god. So this is a moment, I think, that when we feel in our life first time, when something happened, like after COVID, we all have lost loved ones. Maybe your mother died, your father, or maybe your siblings or a friend of yours was passed, and then you think about, you look the world differently. Somebody you had there is no longer there, and that is, I think, the moment when people have this aha moment, when they say, okay, now I need to think about it. Because, if you don't think about when you're 20 years old or 25, you don't need to think about it. You still have so much ahead of you. But when you turn into the 50 percentile, like you said, glass is either, empty or half full. And that's in my mind, the moment when people are realizing and taking, themselves from the bootstraps and doing something about it. So that's what I've seen a lot of people now of our age to kind of do, and it's really, really compelling and I think exciting to see that people are doing something about this, because often we think that the society or the healthcare system or your doctor has to do it for you, but no, it's up to us ourselves to make the change and really become better ourselves.
Yeah. I completely agree. And something you just said really resonated. So I have a very interesting family background. So my mother's family is Danish. Let me think about this. My grandfather's 100% Danish. Like very strong, like Danish lineage. And then I can't remember what I'm third or whatever at some point. Someone can do the math for me. But that side of the family, my great grandfather was, I think, one of 7, and there were like 5 centenarians, or 4 centenarians, one that made it to 99, and then one that died in a car accident in his 40s or something crazy. So I had that, and I think like mentally I was always like, oh wow, like I'm just very lucky, like I have a great chance. And then to your point, I recently, in recent years, like watched the passing of like my grandmother and my father, 2 grandmothers and a father, very quickly. My father at a relatively young age from like chronic disease. And that was like it was a wake-up call. Right? It's like, wow, like there's kind of that mortality that you're talking about. And then watching a loved one go through that as a son, I just made a vow. I was like, whatever extent that I can control it, I'm not going to put my kids through that if I can help it. And so because of that, heck, look, I have a podcast on this stuff. That kind of like sent me down this path of just like, hey, how do I optimize, every day? And not like in not a maniacal way, but I'm not so crazy about it that it consumes my thought at all the times. But I'm like, how do I give myself the best chance every day to wake up, feel great, and be the best father, husband, and just person that I can be? And so it's like you start going down these avenues of like sleep and nutrition, which is so interesting. And maybe that's even a good segue. Because of that, that's why I was so interested in what you're doing. Nutrition, I would say most people would probably agree with me. It is incredibly confusing. Even if you are well-intended, someone like myself, and you are kind of taking it upon yourself to do the research, there's so much conflicting information, misinformation, almost like cultish dogma around some of this stuff. It's like, man, I'm trying to do the right thing, but where do I even begin? And what kind of piqued my interest about what your team seems to be doing, and I would love for you to explain, is this seems to be like highly individualized. And for someone like myself, interesting in that like there's someone there to help you hopefully answer some of these questions. So maybe to that end, like could you talk a little bit about Elo Health and why you founded it, how you founded it?
Yeah, so I'm not a nutritionist, I'm not a dietitian, I'm not a medical doctor. I'm a technologist who, like we discussed, has spent a lot of time in virtual worlds and has a viewpoint into the tech and I think the data. And I built a lot of products. So I think I understand how to put complicated things together into a very usable system. And we are trying to now build a company, Elo Health, that basically is taking data of your body and turning it into the right nutrition plan for you. And then we don't just tell you what to do, we are delivering you the nutrition to your doorsteps. So as you said, taking away this huge amount of complexity we today have and the whiplash, bacon is bad, bacon is good, eggs are bad, eggs are bad. I call always that the nutrition news is the original fake news. That invented it, and now we have everybody copied, the nutrition news because it's just silly. Like you can read a research paper headline in 15 different ways, and you can make it whatever you want to make it, or you can handpick one study done in some obscure country and make it a big headline saying like chocolate is killing people. Like, not really. It's pretty good for you if you eat dark chocolate only. So anyway, Elo Foundation is basically going back maybe 20 years ago. My wife had a thyroid tumor at age 21, and the other thyroid was removed or mostly removed, and then it ended up in autoimmune diseases, hormonal imbalances, a lot of these things we don't know, unknown unknowns. And we spent a long time to tackle them because basically with the condition you could not get pregnant. So it's tough to know. You find love your life and you want to have a family, and then you can't do it because of this condition. So we spend a lot of money and time on Western medicine, Eastern medicine, and in the end we realized that the outcome and the impact we found was from nutrition. So we went to diet that was like no meat, no wheat, no grains, no sugar, almost like a keto diet. And that was able to lower inflammation and help my wife heal her body. And we became big believers of this idea of food is medicine. And it can also hurt you. 80-90% of the cost today in the healthcare system in the US, about $3 trillion, is spent on chronic condition management, that is lifestyle diseases. So at Elo, we try to take that idea and really make it easy for people to get the right nutrients. So how do we do it today? We have a system where we send people a kit of biomarkers biomarker kit that, you prick your finger, you bleed a few drops of blood into a card, you send it to our lab. We analyze the lab results. We are testing the lipid panel. Think about your LDL, HDL, triglycerides. We look at the diabetes marker A1C. We look at your inflammation, homocysteine. We also do vitamin D, vitamin B, and also looking at some mineral vitamins like iron to understand how is your body doing today. And then we push that data into the AI at Elo. At the same time, we also ask if you want to connect your wearable devices like, Apple Watch or the Ōura Ring or the Whoop or whatever you have, scale into Apple Health and then to Elo. So we take into account like what happens daily in your life, your recovery, your activities, and then your blood biomarkers that is telling about your overall health. So the AI is then giving you the plan that we are delivering to you via a dietitian. So we wanted to have real people in the mix because it's so complicated. It's good to have a translation from the real person to you directly. And then what we do, we deliver supplements to you in a daily package that are made for you with your name, all customized to your health. And then every 90 days, we do the blood work again to show you the outcomes and the improvement. So that's the beginning, what we've been running now for 2 years. And we launched the service in February, so anyone can now sign up in Elo Health. And we are adding, of course, a lot more products. So the idea is to build like a holistic nutrition product that can curate you always the right food or supplements or whatever you need to perform optimally.
Yeah. Well, and I know, I can't remember if we talked about it before or after we started, but I know you're an avid rock climber. We've talked a little bit about skiing. It also seems to have, and now correct me if I'm wrong, Elo Health seems to have a bit of like a performance bent as well. So like, I guess who is Elo Health right for?
We call the people who I think Elo is mainly today for these performance-driven optimizers. So people who already are tracking their health, they are already looking to get healthy. Many people who, let's say, they play ball in college, and then the life happened, the family happened, and the work happened, and they gained 40 pounds. And then they had the Memento Mori moment at 35. Maybe a doctor said to them that, hey, do something. Or maybe, somebody in the family passed away. And they were like looking at the mirror and saying one day, like, I haven't given myself any time in 15 years. I want to do something about it. And then they started, can I go back on a bike? Can I go back on the Zoom? Can I start doing something for me? And these are people now who are looking around, like, what are the next steps they can do to feel good, feel better, and really improve their health for the next 30 years. And that's kind of the persona I think we are seeing a lot who are signing up to Elo today.
Yeah. And, I think, again, that's why the mission resonates so closely, is because, like you said, you would love to just kind of put like the best version of yourself forward. And there does come this moment for whatever reason. There could be a whole host of issues. But when that starts to change and that way that you used to feel has kind of escaped you, it's real. I mean, if you're someone who prides yourself or really thoroughly enjoys like operating at a very high level, that is really tough to deal with. In my day job, in addition to talking on a podcast, like I'm in sales. And so the majority of my day, it's like I need to be quick. I need to have recall. I need to be able to think strategically. And in my 30s, I started getting a little bit of that brain fog people talk about, or that inability to have word recall as quickly as I used to in the past. And that was really alarming to me. And so it's very cool to hear that, one, there's no shortage of information out there, but two, like there's new technologies and companies like yours that are actually using data and AI to help take some of that guesswork out of it for someone like myself, to hopefully at least get back closer, at least get the nutrition component dialed in, so you can hopefully start feeling the way that, you're accustomed to.
And I've been myself, we have our family is in crisis mode in the moment. So anyway,
if it's not your kids, it's mine. So don't worry about it.
I know. But the funny thing here is that I've been optimizing myself for a long time. So I've been trying to getting soon 45, really hoping to perform still on a level that I can get still some PRs and still do something better than before. And I've been rock climbing.
And I apologize. Did you say you're 45?
I'm turning 45 soon. So getting like to the level that how can I still do some things that I can be proud about myself, and I don't need to go do crazy stuff like Alex Honnold, but in rock climbing I want to more like can I get good at something, and my hope kind of has been for a long time that I could still compete at the masters level. So I've been competing a little bit, but I'm an old guy in the normal category. But when I get to the 45 category, I'm gonna be the young gun for a couple of years at least.
Right.
So my hope is that
the young spring chicken.
And what I did in that realm is that I decided maybe 5-6 years ago. I've been very self-reliant, and I'm like a normal guy who doesn't want to get advice. And I decided that let me give myself to other people and let them help me. And I started to have coaches on everything. I have a rock climbing coach. I have a strength coach. I have a nutrition coach. I have a coach for cycling. I even had a coach for sleeping for a while. And that made a massive difference, because suddenly you have somebody else who is keeping you accountable and looking at your habits and then telling you that there's a point here we can modify. And we are so accustomed to the way we do things So for me, that was really the big deal in a way that, if you really want to do performance and optimize from brain to the body, it's really critical to have somebody help you. And that's why we deploy at Elo dietitians who, by the way, are just amazing people. I mean, I have learned so much from my coach at Elo. I thought I knew a lot, but I knew nothing. And we have these completely silly preconceptions about nutrition, like because somebody we read about somewhere or we heard in a podcast or whatever happened, and we believe in that. And our team is bursting bubbles every day, and people are way better off because today what we do as an example. So when people come in, they go through a questionnaire. We ask about the medication. We also ask about how do they supplement, how do they eat, and so forth. And in the beginning, it's almost more about removing things people do that are wrong. We have plenty of people who say they take this and this medication, and they take this and this supplement, and they happen to interfere against each other. And basically, if you do both, you get no benefit of anything. And this is the thing that people don't know, and the medical community doesn't know much about nutrition. So we're trying to kind of help those two worlds kind of intermingle a bit better. And it's just so difficult. And I mean, but the outcomes have been, last 2 years we've been in the market, first in the test mode and now in the market properly. We have seen 90% of people who sign up Elo have a real impact in their blood biomarkers by month 6. So think about 6 months, you see impact that, you might not have ever seen before because you didn't know what to do about it.
Excuse me. And of those people who have like committed at least to like the 6 months and, given it the real college try, like what other sort of like positive enhancements are they seeing just in their day-to-day life, well-being?
Yeah, I think the one thing that is interesting, I think it's more maybe a men thing that we're not very good at knowing what's happening inside us. So there's the saying that half the people don't know if they are hungry or thirsty. So they end up eating when there's a drink, not beer, but maybe water. And that happens a lot. So it's tough to know at times, like what is the impact of something? Like, can you really feel it? There are some things that I think people have told us, and I think I have felt myself that 90% of people who come to Elo, their vitamin D is too low. And vitamin D we get from the sun, but because we use sunscreen and hats and everything, we often don't go without a shirt into the sun. And if we do sunscreen all over the place. So we don't get enough vitamin D. Vitamin D is a critical component in many ways in our health. I don't know if you know, but as an example, there's a lot of studies about COVID impacting people much worse if you have low vitamin D. And vitamin D is fairly simple to fix by supplementation and lifestyle changes. So that's something that we are able to fix on almost everybody. And I happen to be one of those people who had a low vitamin D. And my team, they took all my data from my blood work from Quest Labs and from my health system, because you can now collect all that data from the Apple Health. And they found out that I had 2 times I was tested for vitamin D, 2015 and maybe 2019, and my vitamin D level was 15. It's way too low. Okay. And now after some supplementation, we were able to get my values to optimal level. It took about 9 months to do that, because they also found out when they took my DNA SNPs, they found out that I have a mutation that makes me poor metabolizer of vitamin D. So sun didn't really work for me. So I had to have a massive dose of vitamin D. But what happened then, I actually felt different. And I saw the data in my Ōura data, in my sleep quality. I saw some recovery, numbers to be better because I was optimized. And I had no idea. Nobody ever told me that the health system or the doctor never told me that I have low vitamin D. And it even read in my medical record that I have a low vitamin D. Nobody ever told me. I never had supplements in my life before 2 years ago. And what happened last summer, once I had found about this, I actually went back to Finland and met with my parents and my siblings and so forth. And I got them also sequenced the DNA. And I found that all of them, likely had the same mutation. And, helping them to get the vitamin D up as well might have, saved my family from COVID. So these are just, one anecdotal example from me, how it has impacted my health. But we have a lot of people, especially when, some people who are vegan, people who eat very narrow diet, maybe they're allergic, maybe they just want to eat, like you talked about, people want to talk about diets often, and diets are, they are narrowing down artificially things. So most people walk into Elo in the beginning and they have very surprising deficiencies, red values that they had no idea of. And if you fix the red values to green, usually people tend to be more energetic, they just function better as people. And your point about the brain fog is often related to nutrition as well. We just, maybe we eat too many carbs, we have too high blood sugar. It's very interesting how much the nutrition impacts in your mood and your body. And of course, there's also, we don't today at Elo, we don't do microbiome studies yet because it's a very complicated new science and not very validated yet. But I think that there will be a world soon where microbiome can be impacted by maybe a fecal transplant or some other way.
Right.
And because the thing is that we have now generations of young people who have not been exposed to dirt in a way we were before. And even like if you are born in a C-section, you don't get the microbiome quota in the beginning, because if you are born in a traditional way, you actually get some of your mom's microbiome in you, and that becomes the beginning of your system.
Oh, wow.
And if even more so, if you think about now, Lyme disease is a very common one with the ticks getting, every
That's
place.
a huge problem out here.
Yeah,
so I'm all ears. Yeah.
And Lyme disease, you basically treat it today by megadosing antibiotics that are killing your microbiome completely as well. And after that, you're going to be super vulnerable. And there are a lot of cancer patients who, for example, get chemo, and that also kills their microbiome. And then you basically get every disease possible. So there's so much we don't know about the human body. There's this idea called gut brain, like your microbiome is like a brain. It impacts your mood, how you feel. So it's very fascinating. And I'm again, like I said, I'm not a massive expert in the nutrition per se. I'm a quick study, and I've been reading a lot in the last 10 years. But every day I meet people and I learn something that I had no idea.
Something, I mean, there's so many interesting things there, but one thing just in the interest of time that I would love to better understand is, given that you don't have that nutritional background, right? What has been advantageous about bringing a tech perspective to this field? Like, how is your team using technology in interesting ways? Not that your focus is on separating yourself from the competition, but I guess, to build the most effective product possible.
There's always a benefit that you get if you're an outsider, but there's always, the pitfalls. So I have done few businesses in my life, and sometimes you come with, I call it the beginner brain. So you're the beginner, you ask stupid questions, you don't believe in conventions, you can do things that are silly. Yeah. And sometimes the silly things actually are the things you should do. Sometimes, you look idiot and you do the wrong thing. That's maybe more often the case. So you have to hire people around you who are much better than you. So we have PhDs and super experts who work for the team and work for us and, help to really build the detailed product. But I think what I'm bringing to the table, and together with my co-founders, we have a pretty amazing team. So I mean, I have a CTO who used to be at Nokia as well, building actually phones there. I have another co-founder who was a designer at Apple. He was reporting to Johnny Ive at Apple and built some of the products that we use right now. So I mean, these are people who built amazing things in their life. Yeah. And so what we are trying to do is to look at this from the perspective of let's take a step back. And what can we do today in a world where we have a lot of research, where we have a lot of knowledge, and we have a lot of people working on different things? So what we have done in the beginning, we spent almost 2 years now to collect all the different clinical trial data think about clinical research on different active ingredients in food, for example, and supplementation. So we have collected now all of that data, and that has now created the backbone of the Elo algorithm. So we basically take you as an example, and based on where you're from, who are you, your gender, your age, and also your biomarker data and your type of diet. And we match you into clinical trial where same kind of people were tested for improving the HDL. And we know what the dose was, we know what they were doing, and now we replicate the study again with you. Then we are throwing in the mix the dietitians and the clinicians. They look at every plan, they work with you one-on-one, they might modify the plan. So now you have another layer of these modifications, we throw them into AI as well. And then we have this outcome. So you had values A, you had time B, and then you had the next values. You basically built a black box algorithm that is starting to like automatically learn what works. And there might be that we accidentally find like the best cocktail of things or best type of food we deliver to people that will have an impact. I mean, we don't know what it will be, but that's kind of what you can do when you look from the outside in. And then we also have said that we don't need to build the best testing apparatus. We don't need to build the meal. We don't need to build the supplement pill. We will be the brain in the middle that is taking the information and turning it into action. So we are now starting to work with many different type of companies to partner whoever has an amazing product out there that has impact, clinically validated impact. We are more than happy to add it in Elo and then just do this holistic offering where we are tracking all this data and we are throwing different products in the mix. Think about it could be a meal, it could be a drink, it could be a supplement, a protein powder, whatever. And then we are seeing the outcome. So that's kind of where we come and look at this, and we're trying to build a very kind of different company, I think, than what you have today. And it's not going to be easy. I mean, it's a very confusing and complicated field, but the outcomes I think can be humongously beneficial because my thinking today with my limited understanding, and I think I'm right, is that today average American is eating a diet that is so poor that we could rate it 3 out of 10. And if that same person will start to eat diet that is 7 out of 10, they will heal themselves. So we're just eating so poorly today. And even with that poor diet that we can start at the 4 to 5 years old at school already, it takes 20 to 30 years to get sick. So we are getting sick around, the 30, 40, 50 now. And it only takes about a year to heal you. With the right diet, you can heal the 30 years of mismanagement in 1 year. That's how powerful it is if you do it right. But doing it right, of course, is very difficult because we are so accustomed and so ingrained these habits we do, being the pizza, the beer, whatever they are. But the rule of thumb I have is that think about from that perspective, and then just stop eating sugar. That's going to be the biggest single decision you can make because the sugar is the killer. It's not the fat.
Yeah. Well, I've always kind of been fascinated with this. Are you familiar with the marginal gains theory that was employed by British Cycling? I've ever since first being exposed to that story, and his name's escaping me at the moment. It's something that I can't get out of my head. I think about it all the time. And for those listening, I mean, boy, I shouldn't have brought this up if I wasn't ready to describe it. But basically, it's like if you make like a 1% improvement, at minimum across all the things that you're doing within your life, like the cumulative effect of all of those really small improvements could be massive. And so to your point, to hear that, and again, this is just like us talking, but that like the average American, maybe their diet is a 3 out of 10. It's like, what could that do to the quality of your life in all the facets of your life if you were able to make such a substantial improvement? Energy levels, the emotional stability, like the ability to improve your relationships, the ability to sleep better and then consequently have more energy. Like, it's just really exciting to me. And again, like kind of to go back to what we were talking about at the very beginning, all of this technology is starting to catch up. And I was excited to hear that, your team, it kind of sounds like it's really just a data play. At its core, it's like, hey, look, like, yes, like the end product is very important, but ultimately it's like the ability to now use data, use algorithms, use machine learning to make smarter decisions and constantly iterate is exciting. Because I think when a lot of folks think about, you know, quote unquote, a supplement company, you know, they think like, oh, well, where did the protein powder come from? What is the creatine? Where did the, you know, it's just big hulking bulks of powders. That's not an intelligent system that's giving me any direction. So this just feels like the next evolution of where all of this is going. And so I appreciate you, you know, taking the time to share what you're working on, because I think this is amazing.
And I think you really nail it, I think, when you talk about the theory where you have this improvement over time with small increments. Because I think the nugget that you said is actually the key. If you can measure it, you can improve it. Nothing in nutrition today is measured. Only thing you maybe measure, if even that, is your weight. But that's like, you know, looking at the back view mirror last 2 weeks. I mean, it doesn't really, because you eat a burger today, you don't get fatter or you don't weight more tomorrow. It happens gradually. Right. So it's such a slow change again that we can't really see that. And even like, you know, when we gain weight, it happens like it's a surprise. But, you know, your mom sees it. If you see your mom once a year, she's like, what happened? And you're like, well, I don't know. I have no idea. So if it happens over time, you don't feel it. And I think at Elo, we really, I think, believe that, you know, the data is the fundamental piece. And that's why we call this whole idea we call it smart nutrition. And back in the days, you know, when I was at Nokia, we launched the first smartphone, and we call it mobile computer. And I think, you know, on the whiteboard, there probably was also a smartphone name, and somebody was like,
it was one of them.
Yeah, let's pick the mobile computer. And I'm not going to make the same mistake twice. I think, you know, smart nutrition, in my opinion, is this idea that is it's personal, made for you. It's precise, based in science, and it's proactive. And the proactive is the new thing I think people haven't thought about a lot when it comes to nutrition. But I think with the data now flowing back from your body, as an example, there are a lot of people now who are putting a glucose monitor in their arm and measuring glucose against the food that they eat. And they get real-time feedback. I mean, once you try it, you will never again eat Indian food with white rice or the pizza or the tamales for me. Many of those foods are spiking my glucose like crazy. And glucose is kind of like a guitar. You drum too much, it basically gets loosened, and it loses, you know, the sound. You have to rewire and rebalance the chords. So that's kind of what your body is. If you have spikes all the time too often, the whole system gets loose and the baseline goes higher. And that is diabetes, type 2 diabetes. It's no more complicated. And if we can eliminate some of the spikes up, then we can actually, you know, make a healthier society. And I think one easy way that, you know, people have done a lot is intermittent fasting, for example. If you don't eat in the morning, you have less time to eat, you will eat less often, you have less spikes, and you might become healthier overall. So that's just, again, one elimination that can, you know, help you to optimize a little bit of your life.
Yeah. Well, I think, you know, smart nutrition, I think you nailed it. I don't think we'll be pulling that off the whiteboard here in 20 years, being like, what were we doing? You know, artificial food was so much better. No, I think smart nutrition is on point. Well, thank you so much. I mean, this has been such an enlightening conversation. For people who would love to know more about yourself and Elo, where can we point them?
I think the easiest is to go to elo.health. You can sign up today in every place except in New York. New York is coming soon. We have a lot of people who are actually waiting already. New York has a difficult regulation on blood testing that we have to go overcome. A couple more hoops to open New York. And you know, I'm easy to find. Ari Tulla, I think I'm the only one with my name in the world. So if you can't find me on the web, you can't type my name.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And I did look at your personal website, and I was hoping to have some time to talk about some of your cardboard toys that you made for your kids here over the pandemic. I got a kick out of looking at all of that, but maybe the next time that you're on, we can dive into some of that stuff. Well, thank you so much. Such a great conversation, and really enjoyed learning more about what you're doing.
Hey, thank you so much.